And I mean, the real trigger is always going to be employment, because employment is the biggest factor in everything when it comes to, credit. I mean, whether you're talking about a residential credit or residential mortgage credit, which is not really that much of a problem right now. I mean, you've seen some delinquencies begin to rise, but as far as mortgage credit, I mean, delinquencies have been historically low for the last several years. Really, I mean, it's largely because nobody wants to lend in the mortgage space. But it's not really mortgages this time. It's really the shadow banks that have moved into things like auto credit, not just subprime auto credit, even just prime auto credit. Um, it is sort of, I hate to use the comparison, but you kind of have to. It's in a lot of respects, it's like the 2007, 2008 crisis. Not to the same degree. We're not going to see massive waves of banks failing. That's not really the issue here. It's that we have this relatively large space, private credit, that is untested. We don't really know what's going on in it, which, again, this should sound familiar in terms of 2007, 2008. So there's a huge amount of information asymmetry. And the risk is that you have an economy that seems to be at a real tipping point, no matter how slow that tipping point might play out. You've got an economy at a tipping point. And as we all know, I mean, just plain common sense, if you have a situation where the economy is shedding jobs, losing income, that's going to start to raise the number of defaults and delinquencies and all the bad stuff that goes along with credit market conditions. So you've got, the economy at a tipping point, that kind of future, and you have this unknown in the credit market, and it's a pretty substantial unknown. And the real wonder is how robust the credit market system is. And like I said, we haven't really tested these shadow banks. They really have not have been tested in any serious way. You could argue, as I do, that we started to test the shadow bank system in April. In fact, that was one of the if not the primary source of volatility in the April event, was private credit and shadow banks being challenged on their liquidity profiles in a really substantial way. But that all kind of just went away for reasons that people aren't clear over. Like I said in the introduction, where we're really going here is we're going back to that point and saying, okay, it seemed like we got away from it in April. We survived. Everything seemed okay. But then the economy didn't ignite. We started getting more questions about the labor market, which in the financial space raises in really larger questions about the real conditions in all of these huge private credit conduits and vehicles that are out there, and not just in terms of default probabilities, but also liquidity characteristics and how solid that is. And so there's a bunch of questions that really we don't have any real solid answers. And you mentioned a couple of things that popped up, Tricolor being one of those, the subprime auto lender in Texas. Just last week, First Brands, which is an auto supplier that had been factoring a whole bunch of their business. I mean, huge amount of their business. You have to wonder, we don't really have the whole story behind that one. So yeah, there's definitely an auto business component, which is not really a surprise given the fact the auto business never really recovered after 2020. And then you throw onto that all of these other credit questions that come up, and we all know there's massive amount of leverage that's been applied in all these places. And I think factoring is going to be one of those other factors that a lot of people are going to be looking at going forward. And so you put these things together. Okay, is Tricolor and First Brands, along with the losses in the job market, especially even the establishment survey is showing that we have negative monthly payrolls back in June, very very likely negative payrolls in across the summertime. And is this really the tipping point where we start to really reevaluate and look at and take a closer look at everything that's been happening over the last couple of years? Is it finally reaching that point where we start to really ask some serious questions?